All right, so Davis, as we've been chatting, you were just telling me that you're getting over a little 12-hour bug. Your immune system from 2 years ago to today is completely changed, right? And how much do you predicate like that success of the nervous system to the story you're telling yourself and the words that you have in your head versus also all of the holistic approaches that you have to health food movement?
Yeah, the practice of going into the daily habits
Yep.
of what it is for when that time hits, you get set back. What is your ability to respond, as you said, 2 years ago versus where I was yesterday? And what I would tell myself then of just how inconvenient it was that this was happening and how it is going to be getting in the way of so much stuff versus what is this showing me? What is this telling me? And just asking that question,
Mhm.
in my opinion, in my experience, has been helping speed up that process of moving through something rather than lingering in it. So again, the habits that I also have of not take going running to chase down the symptoms and relieving the symptoms and just being in it, moving through it,
Yep.
and that sped up the process.
Yeah.
So what I think about my health habits now and how it's grown 2 years and 3 years and those how that's also rippled outward
Yep.
to the people around me and how what they've experienced too is great.
Yeah. So I'm I'm becoming more and more into this like spiritual mystical realm, like the unexplained or perhaps like even just the more holistic side of things. I've always found myself as some type of holistic approach, but didn't know how deep the rabbit hole really went. Um, and so all of these different things, when I look at symptoms, when I look at health, it's completely changing even week by week for me. I was talking to a guy yesterday who was telling me all about, and this is going to be the podcast before this one releases, um, all about his journey with health and how a lot of what he um, claims that his health is like at such a high level is just water alone. Like he has one of those Kangen water machines that display like they give you like eight different types of water, and even went into the depth of the water that's not just like through your Brita filter, right? Like water that's um medical grade water, which I know that you are on, um, is negatively charged. And so we are a negatively charged human. So we would want to eat things and drink things that are also negatively charged. But there's so many things in the world that are positively charged. And then that's what creates that energy imbalance. It was just really interest. It was a really interesting topic for me. Like he had colitis and then just started changing water, didn't change his diet or anything, and the colitis went away. Like, and those are those things that like you can't necessarily explain. You can, but you can't. It's like some type of in between. So it's always interesting to me to hear everyone's different approach to health and wellness and like how they feel good. So with how busy your schedule is and things of this nature, how are you able to I mean, you're big on farm fresh, right? Locally sourced. I know you do the bone broth, raw milk, all those different aspects. So how were you able to go, like when did it start for you that, hey, you know what, this is actually the lifestyle that I'm going to have, and why is all of that even important to you?
It started when I really looked at the lives that the people around me were living, of the people who were older than me and what they were experiencing, what I was seeing in there. And then also what I was feeling for myself for at the age of 25, dealing with chronic pain and inflammation in my body. I had a moment where I realized like this isn't what I want for myself anymore. I was waking up taking and throughout the day taking 8 ibuprofen, 3 allergy pills, nasal sprays. I identified as someone who had allergies and had sinus problems, and so I created a lifestyle that supported that. And the sourcing of food, the the and going back to where we were just at of, the simple act of drinking water, it's what is the consciousness going into the act?
Mm.
Like, what is this? Is there just this space and time where we're asking ourselves, why am I choosing this thing here? And I started doing that more again as I was viewing other people around me and reflecting inward on myself and what I had created around myself. So I was in these chronic pain states, and I thought I was being healthy by working out and going to the gym, but that's where I was stressing my body out the most,
Mhm.
along with work and other lifestyle factors there. So I looked into and heard a conversation around how the quality of your food can impact the way you're feeling. And up until this point, I wasn't that I was a poor eater. I was like eating takeout all the time. I was eating ground beef and veggies, and though I was eating takeout 3, 4 times a week,
Mhm.
candy bars, just there was nescience to it. And so once I brought in some consciousness and looking at, okay, how does this make me feel? I learned that dairy was causing things in me. So I eliminated this from my diet and I observed how I felt,
Mhm.
how the change happened. And then I eliminated gluten and I observed how I felt. And this was the first time I'd ever done this. I'd ever experienced just this process of, hey, let's just do this thing here, try it out for this. I didn't have a set goal of amount of days. I just said, well, let's just go. And I just really let my body lead me there. And so sourcing of foods, it also that came into important to me of knowing where the food comes from, knowing what it's then eating, and then it got a layer deeper. So not what I'm just consuming, but what I'm consuming.
Yeah.
And those practices there. And then I learned how can I find this around me?
Yep.
I'm in Kansas, so there's a lot of farms around Kansas, yet a lot of the farms are practice very commercial, big ag farming techniques that I have learned are not in supportive with where I want to, how I am living my life and how I
Mhm.
choose to continue to. So finding a regenerative ag farm,
Yep.
found one less than 30 minutes away from my house.
Yep.
At one point I was going my raw milk, I was having to go to a different farm that was 45 minutes away. Now the farm that original one, they started having raw milk. So again, I go into just what is it that I want,
Yep.
asking that question, that moment in time of it, why, and letting that really lead the direction.
Yeah. It's all of those just constant conscious choices that you're making day in and day out and how you want your body to feel. This is all things we've talked a lot about on this podcast before. So people are definitely becoming more and more familiar with this, more and more aware of things like this. So one of the things that stuck out to me from the get-go was you had said I identified with having allergies. It wasn't that you had allergies, you identify. It was a symptom that it was something you were experiencing. You don't take it on as your identity. I am someone that has allergies. I was just experiencing allergies. And so that's a great segue just into telling people a little bit about what you do and how you started to implement all of this word magic that you do and really like what you do now. I know I usually start with this, but since we've known each other for so many years now, I mean, it's easy to talk to you and get away from like just what you do and stuff like that.
And that's where the great authentic conversation comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, the my mom since I was young has always had the sinus problems, sinus infections, and having constant things. genetics. There's been a very common conversation in around family of that's how things are passed down. It's all
Yep.
genetics. So when I got introduced to and lifted, when
Hmm.
I got introduced to the story that we're telling ourselves is influencing and creating our reality,
Hmm.
and I started to throw a stick in that wheel and disrupting it
Hmm.
and seeing how things alter rather quickly
Hmm.
and most majority of the time, I was like, okay, like this, there's again, there's something here to this that will help me create this life that I want versus avoiding this life that I don't want.
Hmm.
And that's where I was for 14 years, was spending majority of my energy thinking about how I can avoid being in this situation. And in doing so, and at the time I didn't understand why. Looking back now, I can, is I had created that around me.
Hmm.
The things I didn't want to become, I was becoming. The traits I did, the habits I was having in my life, I had. The relationship I was having, didn't want to have, that was occurring. So when I understood that the words that we use, and for myself, it was think. It was the internal dialogue what was the major influence of it and what just would take place. And these are go back habits that got instilled over a 14 plus year period.
Yep.
And so being able to one notice immediate shift in some areas
Hmm.
and then notice some things taking longer than others. Some
Hmm.
areas need more work.
Yep.
So with what I do and working with primarily golfers, and I work with non-golfers as well, of understanding how what you are doing in between the shots, what you are doing approaching the shots, and doing so, what are you doing? What are you doing in your mind? What are you thinking about in those
Hmm.
times? And are you aware of how it could be influencing you?
Hmm.
So golfers will quickly nod their head and agree to the saying that golf is 90% mental. They're they are quick to agree. And then when you ask the question of what are you doing to do anything to work on that,
Hmm.
it's a lot of blank stares. Or it's I work harder, I grind it out, I
Yep.
just keep pushing.
Yeah.
And introducing the language concept into the conversation. Okay, what is that exact thought you're thinking before you go up to the ball?
Yeah.
And getting them to write it down. And so we can start looking at the words. Is it conflict language? Is it architect language? And within going into within my coaching, educate them to where they're able to use this stuff out on the road on their own to again to get to that tour that they're wanting to have that paycheck, and to also know that they have support rather, and it's not a drama bonding raw cheerleader
Yep.
type of coaching.
Yep.
It's a very practical, hey, what are you feeling right now? Is it maybe it's story work, or we're gonna log on, we're gonna do breath work,
Yep.
or we're gonna yeah, have who knows where the conversation goes.
Yeah.
It's that agenda free coaching of where is it that they are at and how is their mind influencing their current state? What's the current story they're telling themselves about whatever it is?
Yeah. Um, for people listening, I mean, the simplest way to put this is whether someone's a golfer or not, I'm gonna miss this shot. This shot is so difficult. Like you're speaking that into your reality. It's like, I don't want to fall, right? You keep telling yourself I'm not gonna slip on this ice. I don't want to fall on this ice. And then all of a sudden you fall on the ice. Well, you continue to repeat that over and over. Um, and so with your coaching style and the enlifted method, um, it's really about getting all of the thoughts out, mostly onto paper, but also just becoming more aware of the thoughts as well. And so, how does your coaching and this method specifically differ from someone just using positive affirmations?
the cleanup that takes place. Golfers have a lot of built up scar tissue in
Hmm.
themselves, especially if they're at the level of on a professional tour or aspiring professional tour. They've played a lot of rounds. And so understanding is the scar tissue that they've built up, those all those past rounds, past memories, is there any influence on them? And understanding like that's not the negation acknowledge, not the starting point. It's also, hey, where are you trying to get to?
Hmm.
What is it that where are you trying to go? And the difference of the just giving positive affirmations is that you have that going into the scar tissue
Yep.
and understanding there's some good moments that I can take out from these
Yep.
and using that as evidence to use fuel yourself in future rounds, which is way more impactful for players who are standing on the 13th tee who just had a double bogey. They're playing for to at literally advance to get to that next stage of their career, and they just put themselves out of contention on that last hole. And do they have what are they able to do in that moment?
Yep.
And having something that's just rather than just printed off of Google of some positive phrases versus having some evidence of saying I'm a contender
Yep.
and having that combined with the breath and having that nervous system with it the breath as with the words
Yep.
versus just the words alone
Yeah.
and getting golfers who I just didn't have it today. Things just weren't clicking out there.
Mm.
And how often they struggle to find a rhythm in their game, and it's largely due to their body being out of rhythm.
Mm.
And so, again, you can play golf very well and have zero even awareness of this conversation even happening. Like
Yep.
it's completely possible. And no, when you bring light into telling a guy how asking him how are you breathing as you get over the ball, and they're going to be like, oh, I don't know. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Now let's get better question. Where are you breathing?
Mm.
And getting them to start identifying, is it up in the chest and the shoulders?
Yep.
Is it down low? How that affects mobility, how it affects dynamic mobility, how it affects confidence levels.
Yep.
Um, and breathing and creating that rhythm before the round starts, during the round,
Yep.
after the round, um, specifically after shots.
Yeah.
While you're watching that ball, whether it's doing what you want it to do or it's not going where you want it to go,
Yep.
what are you going to do? You either react or respond. Bring that response in by letting that breath get longer.
Yeah. So what I mean, a lot of what I'm hearing is, and the reason I bring up something like positive affirmations is it's such a base level entry to working on yourself, even just a better overall satisfaction of who you are, right? And I think we've all done, most people have done just positive affirmations at some point. And I think there's some type of double-edged sword. There's some type of nuance between it. They can work, but they also cannot work. Where they can work in terms of a reprogramming, a renewing of your mind. If you have 50,000 thoughts and 40,000 of them are negative, and then all of a sudden 30,000 of them are negative and 20,000 are positive, over time, I think that your psyche can begin to change. But the main thing that I see that separates you and a lot of the enlifted practice is that um, trauma is what happens inside of you, not just to you. And so when you're talking about the breath, you're talking about the scar tissue, you're talking about the stuck emotion in your joints, in your chest, in your organs. That's where all of that nervous system regulation, that's where all of the breath work starts to come in. And so, yes, something like positive affirmations can help you, especially as a starting point, or even later um, in your livelihood. But unless you're moving through all of the emotions that you haven't yet uncovered, then there's always going to be that clashing, that barrier where you're trying to tell yourself one thing, but you don't even believe it because you've got all this other shit. Right. And so one of the big things for me, like listening to you, especially about golfers, you talked about a certain outcome, right? How we're trying to get to this tour, or we want to shoot um uh in within this range for this round. How much of like golf is actually outcome focused versus just present in the moment, one shot at a time?
Again, golf is a such a unique sport in that you have so many different characters that come onto a course,
Hmm.
body types, past histories, compared to other organized professional sports.
Hmm.
And again, even other things like golf, like you can a lot of people can play golf, and that's what's great about the game. It's how accessible
Yeah.
is it there. And repeat your question for me one more time.
When you look at golfers that, let's just dial it down to who you work with, right?
Mhm.
How much of it is present moment, one shot at a time, versus looking at things outcome focused? I want to
Yeah,
shoot in this range. I want to be on this tour.
yeah. The place to get to is the first is to be in that present, and golfers get stuck in that score focused, outcome based.
Yep.
Knowing where it is, there's realistic expectations of knowing like, okay, if I'm going into a tournament, what scores are going to be in that area? Like
Hmm.
that thought's going to come in. And it's
Hmm.
just, okay, how much does that thought actually just whole weigh on you?
Yep.
So does it turn into, okay, now it's a feeling of pressure, or is it just an acknowledgement
Mm.
to it? So a golfer on the course, being in the present moment, shot by shot, the last shot you just hit, it didn't go where you wanted to go. It puts you into trouble. As you're over the next ball, are you still thinking about what just happened there, or are you now focused on what's in front of you? I talk about a round of golf being whether you play 9 holes or 18 holes, it's a set of obstacle courses, and
Okay.
each hole is a different obstacle course. And how do you face obstacles when they're
Hmm.
presented to you? And so if you're struggling to be in the present moment, you're fixated on past shots, you're fixated on past scores, you're worried on future scores, you're worried about what you think other people may be thinking of you as you're out there. If you're playing bad, are you holding up to people? You're getting the thoughts of, oh, all these people have been supporting me, and now I'm, wasting their time.
Yep.
And again, we talk about being present. And so whether we're, you're talking about outcome focus, but it's also those other poles that
Mm.
bring a golfer out of that presentness.
Okay.
And so it's like I said, it's a small part of the score, but it's a lot of these other minute things of what is my dad gonna think about me? What
Mm.
is my girlfriend gonna think about me? What are my sponsors gonna do about this?
Yep.
It's it's these areas that have the emotional pull. Again, being a golf, they're competitive in nature and they're talented,
Yep.
and so that grit and grind it out mentality, that's in them.
Yep.
It's teaching them how to that if they want to, totally optional, if they
Yep.
want to do, how far they want to go in a direction of this. Do they want to turn that grinded out mentality down some and
Mm.
turn up the ease mentality, ease and flow
Okay.
with the becoming present?
Yeah. So a lot of the reason why I prefaced that question is I've been combative with myself in terms of being outcome focused versus just being in the present moment, leading with my heart with everything that I do. And should it even matter what the outcome is, right? And so when you're like throughout your coaching career, with a lot of these guys that have had those bigger wins, whether it's um a new low score or they just won a tournament or XYZ. What have you noticed about people and their accomplishments and how they've been able to actually celebrate the win without just looking to towards the next one.
Yeah. Uh, if golfers are on an active schedule, they pretty much always have that next thing on the calendar.
Yep.
And so when that good moment does come, do they what do they do? The common thing for golfers is to crack open a couple beers
Yep.
and to feel good about yourself.
Sure.
That's the comment. Just
Yeah.
and then after that, it's just on to the next day.
Yep.
And that's their like little moment of it. Now, some golfers more than others really lack the self-appreciation,
Hmm.
and even on good rounds, they find heavy faults and things
Okay.
and criticisms in it. So the ability to get a player to learn to have this self-love is what it comes into, to celebrate wins, to appreciate themselves enough to have the time to celebrate. And whether that's they get in their car and they sit there for 2 minutes with their eyes closed and just having a moment of self-reflection after that round happened, or it's going in and writing out that entire positive
Mm.
moment of the day, that round, that string of holes that you're really proud of yourself for,
Yeah.
the accomplishment of the week long practice rounds into competition rounds,
Yep.
going into highlighting it with the words on paper and utilizing that to help them internalize it to where then when they're able to apply that method in smaller doses and micro doses more through the day
Yep.
to have the versus feeling like, okay, I got to sit down and do this thing for 15 minutes in order to celebrate my wins. Like I can celebrate this win here and feel good about it. And 15 seconds later, we're into that next thing.
Okay.
So that's how you celebrate wins, like actively on
Mm.
the course.
Yeah.
Because again, on the golf course, you're out there for 4, 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
So what are like there's that time of what how can you celebrate all the mini wins that are occurring out there in real time,
Yep.
and then after the fact giving that, and to where then that next event that they're going to, that next thing, they're able to go into it with gathered evidence,
Yep.
and this self appreciation, this leveled up feeling inside of them, and it's more of a raising the baseline for themselves versus feeling like they're shooting up on a high.
Yep.
Because if you shoot up on the high, then falling back down. And a conversation I have a lot with golfers is having the airplane taking off mentality rather than the rocket ship
Okay.
mentality and blasting off. And that's and being able to understand whether that's in just a singular round itself or it's in their progression through a season
Yep.
of, okay, we're just going to take our time and gradually there. And when we
Mm.
say take our time, I mean like create our time. So if
Yep.
you want to go fast, like, okay, create a faster intensity. You
Yeah.
want to like go slower with it, do that. Just know though, does that fast, can you sustain it? How
Okay.
long can you sustain it? If you go here and then it's there, how useful was that? And that goes into practice mentality, because playing the game itself is one thing, but how you practice and all those other things around it, hitting on the range, putting green, the workouts in the gym,
Yep.
and all of that. Again, are you just trying to fix everything in 10 days,
Mm.
or is it process oriented?
Yep. Now, when you're looking at the process, right, of you're going to have up and down days, a good day of the driving range, a bad day, a good workout, bad workout, especially with your coaching style, how are you moving clients through when they have a bad round? Are you still looking for evidence of this is what we did well, or are we using it more just to learn from?
Yeah, it can turn into finding things you did well, and that's when you take the time to break out. break apart a session within a sentence or two, you can have that identification there. But yeah, it it's learning of, because it's that practice session was that moment in time,
Hmm.
and tomorrow will be a different moment in time
Hmm.
there. And so it's reflecting on, okay, what happened before I went out to practice? For example, I was having a conversation with a collegiate golfer
Hmm.
who had two rounds of qualifying. Round one of qualifying took place on a Sunday, and she did great. It was a great round for her. Round two took place on a Monday. And the big difference that was there is Sunday there was no school, Monday there was school. So Sunday she ate a nice lunch. She was able to gradually get to the course. And Monday was she got out of class late, didn't have time for lunch, so skipped lunch and got to the course. Monday's play was much worse than Sunday's. And there was a lot of feelings of how poor she played.
Hmm.
So we talked about not focusing on the poor play itself. We identified, again, we learned these things, that she ate the good lunch before
Yeah.
on Sunday versus there, by going in and asking, hey, what did you do before? What was the hour before your time? And oh yeah, I was rushing and got
Hmm.
here. And then it turned into, hey, and just asking the question, do you expect yourself to play as good without any food in you versus with food in you? Just a simple question of it.
Hmm.
And does that affect your energy? It was an easy yes for
Okay.
her. And getting her to acknowledge how her energy levels were what resulted in the poor play. And what she was very stuck on was how she had a tough time mentally responding. She said it
Mm.
was, she'd been putting in this practice of being mentally tougher, is
Yeah.
what she said.
Yeah.
And it's getting to explain how, we have practice days and we have test days,
Yeah.
and observing what can other influences are out there, because the lack of nutrition will
Yeah.
also affect our ability to mentally and emotionally respond to situations.
Yeah.
And being able to have, yes, we can, and it's skill.
Okay.
It's skill to develop to, be able to do the things on the days that you're lacking a lot of the stuff.
That's
And so
okay.
the conversation is, okay, what can you give on the day that you have? That
Yeah.
100% on Sunday was here, 100% on Monday was here, just because of the lack of energy level.
Yeah.
Can we still give this amount, or do we just throw in the towel halfway
Mm.
through?
That's where my mind started to travel when you were talking about this was I look at, and perhaps they're anomalies, but look at some of the greats. You got Michael Jordan, the flu game. All of these circumstances are all against him, right? He's the only one that ate the pizza last night and then goes and drops 40 or 50 points, right? You've got Kobe Bryant who would go on no sleep and then all of a sudden lights out, right? And so often I think, especially in like this day in where we are in terms of time, a lot of people want everything to be perfect, where it's okay, well, I have to eat my pre-workout meal exactly 30 minutes before. I need to make sure it's this, this, and this. Well, I didn't drink my pre-workout on the way to the gym, so I'm not going to have as effective of a workout. I'm working out at 7 instead of 5 p.m. tonight. Like there's all these different factors. And so with your coaching style, when does the tough love component come in, if it does at all?
Yeah, it comes into how much do they want me to hold them accountable.
Hmm. Okay.
And if they're at a state where they're not wanting to be held accountable, I've learned in my development as a coach
Yeah.
to choose to refrain from working with those individuals.
Hmm.
And if they're like, if they lack this, they are new to it and they want to be, we can slowly build. It's all within
Yeah.
relationship
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've learned, that the ones that, tough, tough love, it's having that person that holds you accountable.
Mm.
It's it is how tact, how how tact with the words, how tact with the energy and timing of it
Hmm.
is a big part. Knowing when to go in, as you said, it's I had a guy that was, we four-step story, did our breaths, we
Yep.
changed the words, and he was still stuck on this situation that happened out on the course involving another player.
Yeah.
And he repeated just it was just strong victim mentality there
Yeah.
around it. And we had been working together for about 5 weeks.
Okay.
And I asked him, I was like, where were you? Tell me, what would your reaction have been 5 weeks ago before we started to work together?
Yep.
And asked him there. Okay. Have you gotten anything out of these 5 weeks? And, if he said yes, and I was like, and you're right here, we're showing there has been nothing, that you have carried nothing over by how stuck you are here.
Yep.
And I was like, is it true that you have had nothing through here?
Yeah.
And in this again, it's like, okay, what now? What are you going to take forward from this? And let it be an option there. Just like, do you choose here
Yep.
to go forward, to move on, or are you going to stay? Because they're both options.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's being able to just have tact conversations and being accurate with the words.
Yep.
Uh, the player doesn't. They may be used to having coaches that are really just tell them what they want to hear,
Hmm.
and so as a coach, just, oh, I'm going to expose this person to something else.
Yeah.
And is that the how often does that happen? It's been rare because the work, it speaks for itself, and how, and getting a person to understand how their internal dialogue, their external dialogue is influencing it. So in this case, he was just having a really tough time seeing how in this moment, like this guy, just it just stuck with him.
Yep.
And come find, there were deeper things of past issues with other
Hmm.
players on courses that
Hmm.
that it led to. So yeah, the and that it just tells how far a player wants to go
Yeah.
if they're going to allow themselves to take that time.
Yeah. It's the coaching world is just so interesting. And even right now, like I'm not in the coaching world anymore. It was enough for me for now, right? I've been in health and fitness for like a decade and I don't want to anymore, right? And so, especially with coaching, there's so many good coaches, so many bad coaches. You know what? You can say that about every single industry, right? Good police officers, bad police officer, everything, everything, teachers, whatever it is. And so I found, especially with a lot of coaches, it was, you go and you get rah rah, or you go and it's this little spike of adrenaline or euphoria. And it's like you go to a retreat and it's these 3 days, but then how do you integrate? Or now with this work, okay, you can go through all of these processes, but it's only about how you integrate. That's it. Because if you don't integrate, then it's this little moment of a high and then cool. Like whatever. I have a new awareness around that. I was just talking with someone where she was telling me the most influential, impactful part of personal development is awareness. And I was like, no, it's not awareness. Like, okay, I ate an entire pizza last night. Cool, I'm aware of it. But if you don't integrate anything, then it doesn't matter how aware you are. And that's really what I'm finding, and what was a very difficult process for me to go through, because I've been in that mentality of you get this little high but then I don't integrate. I get this little high, but then I don't integrate. And I saw it with clients as well. We can get this little high, we can be really motivated, we can get excited, we can get through some stuck emotions, but then if you don't do anything with it, it's you just did it for nothing in a sense, right? And so the accountability is one of the biggest things. So I think what would be helpful is if someone isn't ready for a coach, if someone can't hire a coach right now or XYZ reason, how do people hold themselves more accountable? How do people integrate what they know? Because people can go, I've been guilty of this as well. I listen to a podcast, and then I'm really excited, but then I don't integrate it. So my question is more, how do we hold ourselves accountable to the integration process?
I would say an early step comes with how what do we what and you use the word awareness there is what did I just learn here that I want to take forward? Listening to entire podcasts, reading a book, and where I was just like thinking, okay, how do I, take all of this? I have to,
Mhm.
I just took in all of this, and then it shifted to where really I just wasn't taking anything, and so it's like, okay, how can I take one piece from this? And so for myself, it turned into listening to less stuff,
Okay.
to consuming less, to where then I could consume the same thing again. And then in myself, or I learned that allowed me to okay, pull that piece in that second time, that second listen to the podcast, that second read through of the book, those resonating points
Mhm.
stand back out to me. And so in that point, it's like, okay, now how does this influence me moving forward? How does this change the identity of myself
Mhm.
moving forward? And yeah, why that burst high, that without the integration, we're comfortable, right? It's we I think the desire for comfort is such a strong pull.
Mhm.
It is. And again, as went out to eat last night, and you're an athlete, one of my guys, and competition the next day, and yeah, the choice of the food consumed, the beverages consumed, and was there we've talked about other options and how what he consumed has more negative influence than positive influence.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, it's just what sounded good. That's just what I went with. And again, it's that whether it's that, okay, what just wasn't important enough
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
That was, somewhere for me. And learning about foods that I can consume and not consume,
Mhm.
that sit well and not sit well. Am I emotionally eating, or am I
Yep.
eating for like for actual physical hunger?
Yeah.
Uh, Integration, and a lot of golf tips that people get stuck on. There's the YouTube world of golf is
Mhm.
is a huge booming business of all these different things to try, and it's very much just turns into a lot of band-aids, and we
Yep.
got band-aids covering band-aids covering band-aids. And so that affects integration. What
Mhm.
is the foundation that you're trying to integrate upon?
Mhm.
And so if there's something wrong in that foundation, um, if if the roots haven't really attached downward, then it's going to play a part on the skill of integration, because that's what it is. It's a skill. And so highlighting, hey, what have I ever integrated into my life, and start creating that
Yeah.
evidence list. Where have I said I'm doing this and I did that, and
Yeah.
just start again gathering that evidence. And you can, and then again, being able to just sit down and write that out, go on
Yeah.
a walk and think about it, and then go. And, rather than, if people haven't done this like before, like the walking, in my opinion, is what helped me. I struggled early on in meditation and mindfulness of just sitting down and thinking and trying
Mhm.
to put thoughts on paper. My nervous system, my body was very uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And so it would resist. And so when I learned like, oh, I can go on a walk and I can have this physical, the physical down regulation that occurs from that, that allowed then me to have the conversation and have these things of, okay, identify these things where, yeah, I've done these things and cool. Now, if I want to integrate again, something else is goes into why.
Yeah.
What does it bring in? What does it give me?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the evidence is one of the biggest components to integration for sure, especially if you haven't done something, like you haven't integrated a new skill or a new character trait that you desire. I'm sure that you can go and find evidence of something similar or something that correlates that you've already done, right? And then in turn, use that evidence as a segue into this integration that you're looking for. So that's, I mean, you've talked a lot about evidence today, and um, that's going to be one of the biggest things for people to take away from this for sure. So within the next few years, what are you looking to get out of your coaching practice? Where do you see it going? Um, yeah, go from there.
Yeah, I'm continuing to grow it out, let it become more bring awareness into the mindset conversation around golf. That's
Hmm.
there's this practical thing of the language
Yeah.
that we can get into, and within my own coaching is integrating the physical health along
Mm.
with it and those practices, and that if you want to have a strong and fluid mental health,
Yeah.
physical health is that foundation. And so for myself, continuing to work with professional golfers, aspiring professional golfers, and getting to where they want to go by
Yeah.
having that one educational system that they can go and learn this tool and other tools and habits. And then if they want the support factor, if they want that accountability factor, we have that option as well. This then comes into going on the roads with them, going to events, going and I had a great experience going and um being around the players
Yeah.
in those settings to where then again that's where I get to see for myself. I believe what my clients are, I believe my clients believe what they're
Yeah.
thinking. I get to see what it is for myself in those settings there. And so, yeah, really building out and growing and then getting into, which I've started to do, is getting into universities and working with the college golfers and giving this education into them. So this is my first year from not coaching high school golf for the past 6 years.
Yep.
And pulling myself and resigning from that position was in doing so, putting myself into alignment to put the energy into this area that and again for the next 1 to 3 years that's where I'm putting my focus into, so going and giving workshops virtual or in person at universities, and again giving college programs
Yeah.
structured practical things to do to help their athletes if they're facing if they're whatever it is that they're doing, whatever it is that they're experiencing,
Yep.
and that, okay, it starts with this. It starts with the thoughts.
Yeah.
Just let's start here. And going in with the coaches, how do the coaches talk to the players and those interactions? So like for myself being I'm a coach on the players team. The player has a team of people around them. They're trainers, they're medical, they're physios,
Hmm.
they're some of them have nutritionists. And so for myself, I have clients that have trainers. And so we're not hitting on his workouts. His trainer is doing that. And we are talking about movement practices
Yep.
and integrating those into, again, nervous system regulation and how that impacts his training with it. And he's only seen positives in that change. For the players that are not working with a trainer, we go into the training aspect of it
Yep.
too. So it's helping golfers understand that whether you're playing it again for a career, and then for the ones that also just want to have it be a fun hobby for themselves. They go about, they're the business guy that they go out there in the afternoons because they got all their work done in the morning, and it's that thing that they love. And they do that thing that they love, and they so often have very unpleasant emotions
Yep.
during the time. They're grasping for that one little moment to bring them back. And golfers will talk about, "Oh, I just had that one shot today, and that's what brought me back." It's like, okay, well, what if you had more than one shot?
Yeah.
And it just comes into, okay, what am I, how am I presenting myself as I go out there? So the hobbyist, the person that does business out on the golf course, how does your internal and external state reflect outward when you get upset on the golf course?
Hmm.
So it, it's a, and the practice we were talking earlier of what are you doing on all the other days? So when it's test time,
Yeah.
when it's time to show up, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. It's someone had once said to me, professional athletes don't get paid for game day, they get paid for every other day.
Mhm.
Part of me agrees, part of me disagrees. Because you know what? If you don't practice at all and then you go and play well, you can still make quite a career, you know.
Quite a few
But
people
for
do that too.
yeah, and there are people, you know, and those are more the anomaly type.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, for the most part, it's you're getting paid for going to sleep on time. You're getting paid to put the right food in your body. You're getting paid to go and do the sauna, the ice bath, the massage, all the different things. You know, you're going to get paid for practice, not just game day, because that's just a correlation of all of the other days that are accumulated. So, Davis, thank you for being on. As we just close up, one piece of practical advice that a golfer could take today to go and improve them playing today.
Yeah, if you're going out today, a lot of golfers spend a lot of time focusing on pre-shot routines and what they do before they go and hit the ball. And I challenge them to put more focus into their post-shot routine,
Hmm.
to what happens in that moment after they've hit the ball. So after you've hit that ball on the first tee, how are you breathing?
Hmm.
What are you thinking about?
Yeah.
And really, you put more focus into that, and those pre-shot routines become more effective because you've been able to release the tension and negative thoughts, or trigger yourself into more of a positive pull.
Yep.
And that pre-shot routine is a priming session. Now you're actually prepping for that shot ahead of you versus using so much energy trying to get past that thing that happened the shot before. So we can utilize our time to our advantage in those long moments out on the course when we focus on more post-shot routine and how is our that time after being spent, rather
Yep.
than trying to just put all of our attention into this time before.
Yeah. That's I'm not much of a golfer. So, you know what? I will take that at base level and say if someone is an avid golfer, they'll take and utilize that the best they can, right? For me, it doesn't mean as much. But for someone
It's
that's listening, it just may.
Yep. And for a non-golfer, how I
Yep.
relate that is morning routines and evening routines, or
Hmm,
morning
okay.
rituals and evening rituals. People who
Okay.
have trouble in with their morning ones, looking at the evening
Mm,
ritual. And that's where, for like, I look at my players' evening time routines more than their morning time routines.
okay. That is
So
a yeah.
so looking at how is what I'm doing from this day previous, or does it pull with me into that
Mhm.
next day?
Yeah. It's one of the most helpful things for a morning routine, and this is something that I definitely learned. Um, Setting a time to get up is far less important than setting a time to go to bed. If I go to bed at the right time, I'm going to get up at the right time. If I go to bed whenever, but still have a desire to get up at a certain time, it's much less likely that I do it. Right? And that's one of the easiest things you can start to do. Don't look at when you're getting up, just look at when you're going to bed. And that the next morning will be much easier to get up. So, Davis, if you could just share where we can find you, work with you, listen to more of the good stuff you've got to say.
Yeah, Instagram's the best place to find me, and that's at davis.atteberry.coaching.
Sweet. All right. Thanks, David. Davis. Thanks, guys.